Attention divers. New this week, we got Jon Olsen joining us from the west side, from the west coast. He joins Luca and he dives into a lot of interesting topics. We talk about Jesus and his growth and his journey through a multitude of injuries and whatnot. Really great stories. And then we kind of dive into the end of a conversation about baseball and the internal game versus the external game and just how to have fun and let go. So, what up, Cowboys?
What's up, big dog?
What's going on?
So today we have Jon Olsen with us, and again we have Luca with me as always. And so, little background on Jon from Rancho Cucamonga, California, way out there on the West Coast. Our paths crossed with the Minnesota Twins, but before that he was at UCLA where he was a standout and had exceptional years out there in college and growing up out on the West Coast. He was a big name. So it's a pleasure to have us with you, Jon, and I hope I can bring you some humility today.
Bring me some humility. Is that the intention of this podcast today?
Oh God.
It's not the intention, but I just had to throw a little jab in there.
No, I love it.
But going a little farther, Jon, you were I've mentioned you a bunch in this podcast, and you were kind of the guy that has, been the voice of reason or the voice of God and me as far as diving into the Bible and stuff of that nature. And we became good friends. We were roommates this past year, so we got to spend a lot of time together and getting to know each other and skipping the small talk about where you're from. I had to look all that up, so pat myself on the back there for my research. But before
friend.
this call, we kind of talked about your a little bit of your background and your injury history, and it's a long list. And I know it's jumping right into this, but always battling back from an injury. How has that affected you mentally as far as playing the game and preparing for the game and playing the game or practicing the game that you love?
Well, Luca, probably the last time we were together was that's when you saw me on my high horse. I was going pretty good then.
You were
Um,
a stud. Well, I'm not saying you are now, but
no, but
I mean,
I mean we were doing pretty good, right? We were both on Team USA then.
I would say it's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah. So we were going pretty good, and I was like, oh man, next year, junior year, I'm definitely gonna get drafted high. I mean, um, egos through the roof, feeling pretty good about myself. And then I had appendix surgery right before the season. Ended up getting hit in the face by a line drive at Dodger Stadium, and then I got Tommy John like a month after that. So that was all my junior year, and it was just like one after another after another. I thought I was going to go in the first few rounds for sure, and then end up dropping to the 12th. And then, as Zachary knows, just sitting in Fort Myers and doing nothing for 3, 4 months, just grinding out rehab. But, um, my really my story is about like, it's about Jesus. I know it's like, very singular, but I've had so many ups and downs, so many trials, adversities, but it's really led me back to him every part of the way. If I had what I wanted at the beginning, like even high school, growing up, like we all did, right? I mean, in different ways, like a vision of what we wanted to have happen. Um, I always tell my wife this, like if I had exactly what I wanted, I would be the biggest piece of crap. Like, like the money, the fame that like if I had it like that, like I don't know where I would be. So God in a way protected me, and not only protected me, but made me into a better man because of the trials and adversities I had. And I learned pretty quickly that life wasn't always going to be peachy clean. And I think it led me to just really, really be able to relate to people in a way that people who haven't gone through much couldn't. Um, and I think that's really like last year, the for Neff and I, like winning was awesome. The team was obviously amazing, but like just being able to have conversations with guys in a clubhouse like that was something that has never happened before. I think Neff and I, when we were with the Twins and the conversations we had, it was a lot of not yelling, but we had spirited talks about faith, and I wasn't in a position to do that yet because I was new to faith as well. But I think this year I was like, wow, this is something beautiful that came out of a really tough road with baseball, is just being able to have conversations with guys day in and day out that I never thought I would, you know. Um, I know that doesn't answer your question at all, but
No, it's okay.
that's
No, and we would like to dive into your story a lot more than that. So, like,
yeah.
I was in Florida this weekend, and it made me think of what you were just talking about, basically the gist of it. It made me think of this conversation I had with my girlfriend's dad. We were sitting there talking outside, and he just goes to me, he's just like, we've been talking for a little bit, and he just dived right into it. He's not Zach. And he just and he just goes, if you could go back, would you change anything? Do you have any regrets? I was like, no. And he goes, bullshit. I was like, whoa. I was like, what? I was like, would you? He goes, yeah. And I'm gonna let it there. I'm not gonna get into what he said and everything, but that struck me, you know. And he was almost shocked that I responded the way I did because of all the all the injuries, and this podcast isn't about me, but like injuries that I've went through and things that transpired that could lead to resentment. And it's like, no, I don't have regrets because I wouldn't be the person I am if I didn't go through all that kind of stuff. So I wanted you to kind of go off of that because I feel as though you feel the same way as I do in a way. It's like you don't regret what happened to you, even though it sucked. It's like your career transpired the way it did, but it led you to the person you are. I think that's more important than anything. So, I guess just segue that into whatever you're going to talk about.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's just one of those things that, like I said before, we just have this vision, right, of like what the way we think it's going to go, and we just get led on such a different path than that. But I mean, I completely agree with you. Like, I don't have any regrets. I think that, um, reflecting even on the injuries, it was like a part of me deep down almost feels like, at first I was like, oh, I could have done more. It could have been more in my control. But like a lot of them, it was kind of supposed to happen, and as odd as that sounds, I think it really did bring things out of me that I never knew were there. I didn't know I had resilience. I didn't know I had, um, the ability to get back on my feet. I didn't know that I needed something else besides baseball. I think that's a big part of my story too, is just, you look at like the Old Testament a lot, and God consistently talks about idolatry, and he talks about how his people, the people of Israel, were always chasing after idols. They always wanted to put their faith in something else besides him. And that's what it kind of was for me. It was like my entire life, baseball was an idol on a shelf. It was like it was everything. It was everything to me. Like as a kid, I feel like I don't remember like playing with toys, or like I was throwing a ball against the wall. I was like it was, I was a gamer with everything, with golf, with like I wanted to play, and I knew I was better than everybody else at it, and I knew that I could get to the top. And it was just like, but the problem with that is that I just put it in such high regard. It was my God. And when I played well, I loved it, and when I didn't, it crushed me, and it crushed me time and time and again. And I think that's when I finally, after how many ever surgeries, 5 or 6 of them, and still trying to learn it now, is that like I need something else in my life besides baseball. I need that. I need the priorities to shift. And I think that's where I'm learning with God, is like He's the only thing that can't change. Like everything in our life in the world, it's just everything, it all shifts. It's all ever changing. But he's the only thing that can be consistent in our life, and that's something that I know I beat a dead horse with a lot of the guys in the clubhouse last year. Neff could attest to that, but like, it's because it's the only thing I know now, right? Like this is all like, I think from my experience, and if I told anything different, I would be a liar. Um, so I think he's the only thing that we can truly rely on that will sustain us through the good and the bad. Because it's not just about looking at them in the bad, but also the good, and realizing that anything that's good in our life really does come from Him. It's not from our own efforts. Um,
And I like just being like watching you on a day-to-day basis throughout the entire season. It's just like your consistency, like even though I wouldn't say you had bad outings, but in your head you had bad outings, your consistency day to day was was unbelievable because you showed up as the same guy regardless of the situation. Regardless if we got 2 hours of sleep on the bus or whether and like those were like led to a lot of our conversations just like one on one. Is like, man, like I had a really really rough outing at Long Island, and we're sitting there and you're like, man, just like give it to God, or go talk to God about it, or and then we're 35 minutes deep and 45 minutes deep into a conversation about like believing or entrusting God. So it's just like internally, how does that like manifest itself into you, and like what have you learned through your journey of like giving that consistency, or giving, or like letting go in order to have that consistency?
it's a good question. Yeah, it's interesting that letting go, right? Like I think it's even a letting go of like for some for like, okay, I mean this could go down the rabbit hole, but like for like Christians in general, like it's even a letting go of like your goodness or your Christianity or like your good works, I guess you call it. Like I think there's freedom in Jesus because he shows you that you don't have to be perfect. And I think that's something that I probably might have led you down the wrong path at the beginning because I wanted to know him so bad, but I feel like I pushed Christianity on you a little too much instead of Jesus. And I think I always go back to that verse he says where, you know, his he doesn't have a burden. His yoke is easy, his burden is light. And I think that's something that's just so profound because everything else in the world, I think whether we admit it or not, we're all slaves to something. We're slave to people pleasing, we're a slave to fame, to success, to money, to whatever else it is. But I think when you're a slave in essence to Jesus, you realize that you're free from the world. And I think that's something that last year I started to see a part of that come through. Because I think when I those days when we had like 2 hour bus rides, like, and then you're pitching the same night, like, this sucks. This is awful. Like, there's
Correct.
nothing good about this. Um, but then, like, you realize that he's with you and, that, like, he's going to sustain you even if you go out there and you absolutely crap the bed, like, and you can't get out of the first inning. Like, nothing changes about your identity. So I think that's something, the first time in my life I really started to feel that last year, in a game that's so up and down. Just that peace, that internal peace, I guess. But
And let's go into that freedom a little bit. And what I mean by that is like you experienced that freedom and you had a little fun, but like you also talked about like that perfection piece as you were chasing perfection, borderline prior to this year, and borderline you had a perfect year in theory, like from my point of view. So did letting go of that perfection allow for like that consistency of excellence to show out, or when did that
I really,
transition happen? Sorry.
I really think so. I mean, I think you nailed it. Like my whole, my whole life, I was like Dude, if you saw the stuff I did in high school and college, like I was going to in college, like I went to a chiropractor in Iowa to like go get adjusted and like because he was like the bet like the amount of money like that not only me but like my parents before I had any money like the first years of pro ball like I was doing everything I possibly could to be the best. Like I mean I was and especially like with injuries like acupuncture, Cairo, like, I mean, anything you could possibly think, I've probably done it. The amount of money and resources I put into it, um, and there was just like the control and um, just that striving was crippling at times, like really, really, really crippling. And then I think this last year, I mean, what we had a trainer and like she would help from time to time, but like we had no resources, right? Like, would you agree with that? Like,
Well, I think we were our own best resources. I think
we
that's
were,
why we.
yes,
I
yes,
think that's
but
that's
like
what it was.
we didn't have like professional
Yeah, I
help,
mean, we had the
like in terms of
basics. Yeah, we had
yeah,
basics.
basics, right?
One
So
thing.
like,
Oh no,
go
keep
ahead,
going.
Lucas.
Sorry. No, 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 no,
Oh
no.
no,
Sorry.
all I was gonna say was that like I didn't have any resources, or right, like limited resources this year, and it was obviously the best I've ever played and the healthiest I've ever been. So I think there's something to be said about that letting go and the freedom. There was freedom in my body, freedom in my mind, and I've just never felt it before. It was brand new. So
After being in rehab for a long time, as all three of us have, there's a very distinct mindset that's almost like it's almost like unescapable once you're in that environment. The mindset that you're hurt is the mindset that keeps you there. And I had a hard time when I went through all my injuries in college, where I basically lost my sense of like self, really. It's like I was tied to baseball, my ability in baseball. When I lost that because of injuries, it's just like, well, who am I? I mean, like that's how I felt. But I was always under the impression that I was hurt, that something was wrong, that like I needed this, I needed that. Like I feel you 100% about, seeking anything and everything you could do to get better. But like one thing I noticed is, in college, then I had a fully healthy year in 2022 with the Cardinals. My first year with the Cardinals, 2021, I started the year off on the IL, ended it on the IL. It's just this thing that plays in your mind. It's like when you're in the mindset of being injured, especially, it's even worse when you're like on the island. They say like when you're in, you're at the spring training complex and you're going to rehab every day, and that's the only thing you're doing. And you're leaving. They treat you like you're glass. You treat yourself like you're glass. You lift like you're glass. When you go out and just playing around with your friends, you treat it like you're glass. Like you know what I mean, like it's in your mind, and then that holds you back. You're going to throw, and it's like, well, oh my god, can I throw 90 feet today? Like I was at 75 2 days ago. Like is 90 gonna hurt me? It's like, no, go throw the fucking ball. You know what I mean? And like when you know what I mean, it's just like
100%.
that. And the thing is, though, and I'm not casting any shame on the guys like that I've worked with rehab wise. They were incredible. It's their job to keep us healthy. You know what I mean? It's like I get there's a business on both ends, but like it really takes a toll on the athlete when you're shoved the notion that you're injured, that you're injury prone, that you can't do this because you're going to get injured again, or we just need to keep you healthy. It's like, no, I just need to not be injured. Now I'm healthy. Now I'm just going to go do my thing. I can't be in the mindset like I got to stay healthy. It's like, no, wrong mindset. And I mean, it's tough obviously when you're like, you are injury prone, you and I, it sounded like we have more chronic injuries rather over time. And Zach was unfortunate to have that one that kind of really took a while to rehab from, but like that mindset is what really holds you back. And so like and what I'm getting at is when you're in an environment where you don't have any other alternative, where it's just like it's on you, you don't like instinctively it's like one or the other. It's like, am I going to go out there and play, or am I going to go out there and like what am I going to do? I don't have an alternative. And it's funny how things usually turn for the better when you just let go.
Yeah.
And you just go out and play, because what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was my thing. Is like, dude, the minute that I got the hard brace off my arm, like I probably shouldn't be sharing this story, but like I was going to the beach, and you know those little rubber balls that skip on the water.
Dude, Danielle and Christian are listening to this. I'm telling you.
I'm just saying, I was
Ocean's about
full.
to.
I was not only overhanding it, I was sidearming it. Like I was throwing this thing, and there was two guys that had just got Tommy John, and then there was another guy that was just down there, like because I don't even want to say he was late to the season, but the Twins had just signed him or something, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "It doesn't hurt. Like I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm hurt. Like it actually feels amazing." And I remember talking to like one of you two, and you were like, "Neff, you're absolutely out of your mind."
That's probably me.
And I was like, what am I just supposed to be like? Oh, it hurts. I'm not supposed to do anything. So I don't know. I see the perspective, but it like to me it was like I was like I'm ready. I like if we're going if we're playing today, I like my goal is to play and have fun.
Dude, that's how you were. I mean, when I met you, like I talked about this a few weeks ago on here. It's just like you were always under the impression, like you were just your first. You didn't even throw a live yet, and you're like, dude, my arm feels good. Get me out there. Let me throw. It's like, dude, you've thrown one live. It's like I'm good. Get me out there, bro. Like I'm good. I don't need to do all this shit. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, you were like that, and
But
I wasn't. I was under the impression I needed to throw like. I needed to like prove myself like one more. Okay, I'm good, and that held me back. I struggled because
Well,
of it.
it's just like the good blend. Like if I had the patience to be like in that moment, then I'd probably like I'd probably grow a little. I'd probably get a little better. But like I was so eager, and that's like something.
You can't teach that though. That's not something.
Yeah,
that
but
you need
that's
to shame
something
on.
John and I talked about
Good.
too a lot, and like that's like half of my battle mentally is just like always being in a rush, and like that's why like I continue like I preach slowing down, and like relating this back to the Bible is like if you read the Bible fast, you don't get anything out of it, or if you converse fast. So like I don't know, coming back to John a little bit is just like, were you always this way? You know, were you always this like did your personality shift, or did you just find freedom within like Jesus?
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Like, was there a definitive moment, like where it just clicked?
Um, I mean, I would definitely say I'm a lot different from 5 years ago. Um, I it's some people have these like really divine moments where like there's just a shift, and those are awesome. But for me, like it's just been a gradual process of him kind of softening my heart. Um, I think that's
What do
I
you
think
what do you mean by that? The
well,
softening of the heart.
the best way I can explain it is like probably from the age of 12 to 24, I didn't cry once. Um, and then I opened the Bible for the first time and I read a passage and I started crying. And I was like, "Oh, there's something wrong here. Like this isn't right. I'm not supposed to be crying, you know?" And then I think he showed me over the course of time I was really like hardened to life, like life was I was callous to everything. Everything was, like I didn't let people in. I didn't share things with others. I think this is all fairly new. I think it's who he created me to be, but it's definitely not how I live my life. I think conversations like this or other ones would have really made me feel uncomfortable years ago, but now it's just it's starting to become more of who I think he made me to be. Um, but it's a process. I think it's going to take a lifetime for. I don't think it's ever. I'm never going to arrive. I think it's going to take a lifetime in order to see some of these things come to fruition. But um, yeah,
I got another story about us. Is we're in spring training, or it was like right after spring training ended, so locker rooms low key like limited, and we're both done with our day and we're going into the shower, and you and Ice are talking to me about God and about Jesus and this and that, and you get into the shower and the first thing you want to do is kill a fly. And I don't know if you remember this, but like we talked, I think we had an hour discussion about, oh, like how can that's God's creature, right? And all it was doing was just sitting there on the wall, and like I don't know if you remember that or not, but I do.
Oh, I do.
I just thought it was funny. It was like one of our moments where we started like really diving into this topic and diving into that like realm of the world.
Yeah. No, we had a we had a lot of good talks. We had a lot of good talks in that locker room, but yeah, it's crazy to see like what he's done in your life too. Like I feel like, I mean, whether you admit it or not, like I've seen changes in you too. You know, even just like a few years ago, I think like you care for others more than I've ever seen you, and um, you're the self-centeredness and egocentric mindset is kind of you know getting pushed to the wayside. But I think it's cool to just see that progress. You know, it's not easy to see it day to day, but you can see it over the course of months or years. But
Well, and just having those conversations, like I don't know, last season I didn't have a great season. I had my fair shares of ups and downs, but like just being able to come back into the room and have those conversations, like, dude, I'm euphoric, or I had just had the best outing ever, or it's like, dude, I'm the worst. Like I couldn't get 6 outs today. And it's just like, and then we're sitting there having a conversation, and I don't have any shame in anything that I'm saying either way. Like, yes, he's changed me dramatically, but I'm still Neff, you know, like at the end
no
of the
doubt,
day, like, you
no
know,
doubt.
but like, I would agree with you. Like a lot has changed, and that is a topic that we've kind of discussed a lot. And I mean, just the growth journey through that has been tremendous. And I mean, even when I talk to my parents, I credit you a lot because, like, I don't want to say you pushed it on me, but we were open enough to have these conversations.
Mm.
And, like, you didn't get turned off because I was, you know, at the time smoking weed and egocentrical and, oh, like, I can change the weather with my mind type of deal. Like, it was just like, you know, like, I don't know.
But
Okay,
that's
so
the
is
thing,
that
though,
your
is
public
like,
declaration that you can't?
Get out of here.
You just said it.
Yes, get out of here.
There we
that's
go.
incredible. I
Came
love
out.
that.
I waited 2 years for that.
There it
Anyway.
is. See, that's how you know he's changing, Luca. He's on the path. You know what I'm saying?
He doesn't even know he says it. You just realize
Yeah,
after he
No,
said it.
I knew I
yeah,
said it.
There's a
yeah.
saying: if you feel it within, it comes out eventually, and it just came out.
Mm, mm.
Well,
There it is.
I read that the other day. It's like whatever's in your heart will come out your mouth, and you have to like that is a way to see what is in your heart.
Remember when we had that conversation in Long Island? You remember that? We were talking about that the entire game. Because you were like, do you just watch what you say? And I'm like, no, I don't care what I say because it's like, it literally is just from the heart. Like, he says, like, it's not what goes in you that defiles you, but what comes out of you. So, like, whatever comes out of you is just a reflection of what's going on in your heart, And I think that sometimes too, though, like, what you were talking about with like some of the problems you had going on. I think that overall, as like the body of Christ and Christians, like a lot of times Christians don't really reflect like what's going on in their heart, and they hide it, and they're trying to put on this front, but like God knows exactly what's going on in there, and it's like it's only healthy to share it with others too, like you don't have to live this perfect life. Like he did it for you. So like go ahead and air out your laundry a little bit. But
I how how am I gonna say this? There's definitely a certain time. I'm curious what you think about this, in which, with regard to like you being in control of everything that comes out of your mouth.
mhm.
There's a time to where it's you almost got to prove to yourself you're worthy of that freedom.
Mm.
And
That's a good point. Yeah,
you know, like, you don't just have it. And
it's true.
it's, you know, I'm not going to get into the intricacies of it. Like, it's called the prisoner's phase, and it's essentially just similar to that. It's like proving yourself you're worthy of the freedom, because you don't have anyone, you know, making sure that you're keeping you in line, you know. And you know, when you've gotten to a place where you're pretty confident and comfortable with who you are, you're the person that keeps yourself in line. And then, like, take it a step further, it's like, well, then you give yourself free reign to just be you, because you trust that whatever you will do will be what you truly believe, you know. Whatever you end up doing will be, like, you know, in alignment with, like, who you are. But, like, there's a trial period. You got to prove yourself to that, or you got to prove that to yourself. And like, forget everyone else. Like, that's way down the line, if that even matters. But, like, you have to prove to yourself that you're worthy of that. And I love the idea for sure.
Yeah.
But do you agree that there's a time where, like, there is a little gap where it's like, I'm working on this rather than, like, I'm just gonna say whatever I want? Yeah.
1,000%. It's biblical. It's what Paul talks about with renewing of the mind. So the Apostle Paul was killing Christians before he had an encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. And when he was doing that, I mean, he thought he was doing it for God, but, like, he was literally killing people. And then he goes from that to preaching the gospel and being, you know, basically Jesus' right-hand man when it comes to spreading the word. But he talks about renewing of the mind, and he talks about this battle because that's the idea, right? Like, when we start to walk with Jesus, we have new life. So it's like this new life, there's a battle between the old and the new. So, like, for me, there was a battleground between, like, this old John that had really bad thoughts and really bad intentions and just, like, overall, like, just not good. Whether, like, even my family or, like, those around me, they're like, "Oh, you were always a good kid." Like, no, I wasn't. You didn't know what was going on in my heart and my head. Like, I don't really care what you have. Like, God knows, and I know, like, where I was at. So it's like between that person and then the one that God is bringing you to is, like, there's a renewal where it's like you have to confront those lies with the truth, right? So it's like, I don't even know, like, what's the simplest one, like, you know, like, I have no self-worth, or God hates me. It's like you have to confront that with the truth that, like, oh, I do have self-worth. Like, I have so much self-worth that God died for me. Like, he was put on a cross and died for me. So, like, you're confronting that, like, those lies and the falsehood with, like, the truth. But I think there's, like, there's a decent amount of time where there has to be, like, you're 100% right. Like, I didn't know what was going to come out of me, you know, sometimes, like, but I think then once you start to believe the truth more than the lies, then, like, it just starts to kind of pour out of you, you know, where it's like you don't have to worry so much about what you're going to say. But I think that's, like, the best example of it with Paul was he was having a really hard time with that between, like, his old self and his new self. And I think, I mean, I may be completely wrong with this, but, like, I think there was a time after he had an encounter with Jesus, like, he took time in order to basically, like, reflect on his encounter with Jesus and basically, like, solidify his identity. And he didn't even, like, ask anybody else about it. Like, he basically, like, looked within and also looked to God to give him guidance. And then that's when he started his new ministry. But what you're saying is 100%, like, biblical. It's like there's a time period where you have to really, like, trust that what's going to come out of you is going to be good, you know, and that takes time, I think. But
Absolutely.
So you're in the process, like, let's just say, for me, I'm in the process of that rebirth, or that mental regen, however you want to call it. You have your setbacks. How do I continue choose the right path? How do I continue to walk towards God with that aim, or Jesus in that aim?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'd say is like, what do you feel like is your stumbling block to that? Not in terms of like, I'm not even saying like, I'm not even asking like a personal downfall. Like in your mind, what do you feel like is keeping you from walking that path?
Fear.
Fear. So this is crazy because you told me today that you were saying like, okay, we're going to talk about like you wanted to talk about like being internal versus external, but then you also wanted to talk about um like having fun in the game. And I was just thinking about it after, and I always had the game attached to fear a little bit, like fear of not becoming who I want to be, fear of this, fear of that. And then one day it hit me that he says perfect love casts out fear. So what if that was applied to every aspect of your life? What if, no matter what fear it was, what if you let perfect love cast it out?
And perfect love is His love,
Perfect love is his love. And I
and
think that's
and
what,
you're accepting of that, and you're or what
well,
receiving of that. You're open to that.
what is the fear that you have?
Well, I just have a lot of uncertainties,
Yes,
right?
of the future of,
Of the future, of what's next, of what's going on, and just like anybody else. So it's just like I don't know. I find myself lacking discipline when I want discipline, or I like I'm not getting out of like I my alarm goes off at 5:30, and it's like, oh well, I can not get out of bed till 6 because I don't have to leave till 6:30. Well, it's just like I set my alarm at 5:30 for a reason. Like I want to get a workout in. I want to go eat. I want to go make a breakfast, and then I want to do that. And then like I'll do it for 2 days, and then 4 day or 5 days I won't do it, and then all of a sudden I'm in that negative routine. So you get what I'm saying? So it's like I
100%.
get
Yeah.
I have that purity of heart where I'm like, man, like I really want to go in this direction, and then all of a sudden I face a challenge, or I face tiredness, or something, and then I give up easy, I guess.
I can relate to this literally within even the last few months with job uncertainty. Like I think there's a negative, it's like a negative feedback loop, right? And it's like, and it has to do, and I think it happens a lot with other things, but it also happens with your relationship with God too. Like if you think that you're not like performing enough or doing enough or being enough, like I think there's like a rabbit hole essentially that you get into where it's like it's hard to get back out, because like that's part of the, I think, as us as like performers and baseball players our whole life, I think we associate um, performing with God's love as well, and that has nothing. It has nothing to do with God's love, and that's a really hard thing to wrap our heads around. That we don't have to earn His love. So whether you wake up at 5:30 or 6, or if you sit in bed with Doritos all day, He's gonna love you the exact same. And I think that's something that's hard for even me, like for me to that it's actually really hard for me to grasp. I think it's going to take my whole life until I see him again in order to grasp like his love for us. But I think the more that you can grasp his love, the more that it will cast out the fear, the doubt, the striving, the anxiety, the uncertainty about the future. Because I think that's like, for me, when I'm uncertain about the future, what am I really saying? I doubt him, and I doubt that he has a good plan for me. Because like the future, like whether I get a job, whether whatever happens, like the health, whatever in the future, like if I'm doubting that, I think that my plan is better than his. So I think that's where Jesus talks about not being anxious about anything, about your food, whether you have food, whether you have money, whether, whatever it is. He's saying to be anxious about nothing because, like, look at the trees and look at like, none of these things worry. Like, why should you? I care more about you than I do that, So it's like, I think that's part of it is like I think that's really faith in essence too. It's like it's grasping the fullness of like who he is and what he's done for you, not so much like what you can do, you know? And that's hard as a baseball player. Like,
So how do you? So you speak of God's love. Well then, this is my opinion. I think that's half of it because
mhm.
you have to be someone who you love as well as, and then God loves you as well. Like, I think in order to be moving forward in the right direction, obviously God's love is there, but I think what a lot of people lack is the love for themselves as well.
Mm.
The love when they look themselves in the mirror, the the admiration of of who they've become, the things they're striving for, the way they live their life on a daily basis. It's easy to say that God loves Hitler and myself the same, even though you know it's an astronomical thing to say. In theory, it's like, well, he does. It's just Hitler made some terrible decisions and I didn't.
Mm.
But like the love for yourself is what I think is a component that a lot of people lack.
Mm.
So in your eyes, how do you work on that? If you're just
Mm.
talking like about love for yourself, is that love for yourself gained by knowing that God loves you? And in which
Mm.
case, is that gained by action?
Mm.
Like where is that line
Yeah.
drawn to where you start feeling that way about yourself? Because a lot of people lack that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one, but I think the way I see it, and I know a lot of other people see it differently, but um, I think of like grace as a superpower. So like God's grace is what makes me want to change. And I think that's interesting because the cross is something that is the most offensive and the most loving symbol of all time. It's the most offensive because it says that you're not good enough and you're actually so miserable and terrible that he had to die on a cross for you. But it's also the most loving thing ever because he's saying, "While I had to do that because you're that awful, I love you so much that I came and did it for you." And I think that's something that the more I look at it and the more I look at him and what he did for me, the more I have a I have a desire to change. I think my desire to become a better husband, a better friend, a better brother, whatever, like I think that only comes from looking at what he did for me. Um, because I think internally I've tried to find the strength internally and it's always come to its own end, like I think there's always something next and always something more and always something more. And I think when it's reversed on its head, I think that there can be limitless opportunities of who you can become versus the other way, like in your own strength, becoming a better person on your own terms, there's limits to it.
So what do we let like what are we letting go of in order to find his strength?
The
Uh,
world.
meaning like you're I mean pleasure like so you
Well,
are you actively seeking pain?
no, no, no. I not actively seeking pain. It's not about pain or pleasure. I think it's when I say the world, I mean for other people it's different. For like, but for me it's like letting go of John's wants, fame, success, um, notoriety, whatever it is. I think God doesn't ask you to seek pain. He just asks you to seek Him and seek Him with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's all He asks for. And I know that could be a 10-hour talk on itself, but um, I think that's that's a different. there, whether people admit it or not, there's really two kingdoms. I think the kingdom of this world, and there's a kingdom of God that's unseen, and that's why it's faith. That's why it's faith, is it's unseen. Um, but I think all he wants to do is for us to live for that kingdom, and that I mean, you see it in the Super Bowl. Like it doesn't following him doesn't necessarily mean like you don't become like a monk. It's like for some people in the Super Bowl, they're like million. They have millions and millions of dollars, but they're still preaching Jesus, or they're still saying how Jesus is the forefront of their life. So, yeah, I don't know if I kind of went off on a tangent
So I
there,
mean,
No,
but
just so I understand, like your perspective is like, is this safe to say that you view it like they say that the ultimate sign of respect is emulation? So
mm,
for you, would you look at it as like you try to be what God was or what Jesus was, rather than trying to be yourself in a way like to what am I trying to say? Like,
how do you emulate Jesus in today's age? Is that your question?
mm,
it's basically like what I'm saying is it more so like instead of being someone that's trying to make God that makes God proud, it's almost
mm,
like you try to emulate what Jesus did. And in turn, if you feel like you're doing that, then you're basically just living in his footsteps, and you're
mm.
moving along that path. I'm not saying
Yeah,
you are Jesus, of course, but does
yeah,
that make sense?
similar, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's just I kind of stumbled on the words to find it, but
No, no. I mean, I think I get it. I mean, it's the so after Jesus' ministry, after he died, after he resurrected, and then after he ascended to heaven, he promised us the Holy Spirit. So, um, the Bible assures us of a promise that when we put our faith in him, the Holy Spirit starts to work in our life. And I think that's what I've seen, I guess, for me is like I had a lot of evil desires, evil intentions, but like I really did think I wanted to be like a good person, like I wanted to be the best I could possibly be, or try to, you know, like I guess like God's moral law. Like I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to like I tried to be a good person. But then like God kind of flips it on its head where it's like, look, you're never going to be able to fully do that by yourself. So I'm going to give you this helper, the Holy Spirit, who's going to work in your life to make these changes with you. I think it's I'm not necessarily saying that there's no effort, and there's nothing on your side. I'm not saying it, but like it's a process, it's a walk with God in order to, attain this um like some theologians call it like sanctification, like becoming more like Jesus, right? And I think that's a process that happens over the course of a lifetime, but it's through the help of the Holy Spirit. And that's where I've really seen, I think, like some of these things that start to happen, and some of the things that start to happen in my life. Um, I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that really was from him. Like while I'm going through it, it's like I think like, oh, it's me, but like looking back on it, it's like, wow, he was really working. Um, I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, no, I was just I wanted to like kind of say it back to you, see if I understood correctly. But
yeah.
I get what you're going. I see what you're saying.
Hey Neff, we had a plan of what you wanted to talk about today, and we just talk about something completely different.
It's okay.
I
I mean,
find
we
it.
can dive into that right now if
No,
you
no,
want.
it's okay. I just always find a way to get back to Jesus. Just what I.
I mean, it's great. I honestly, it was exactly what our last one was about too,
Yeah.
um, with Luca's buddy Brandon, and that was an excellent episode too. So I mean, it's good. I mean, we covered the topics like without really covering the topics. Like what I kind of wanted to talk about was like the internal versus the external mentality, and that was something that we talked about a lot, like during the game of baseball. So like if I'm internally thinking about mechanics or I'm internally thinking about like that, like I struggled. But like when my focus was external, like within the game, like oh like let's throw the ball here, like or like I gave myself direction. Like I experienced a lot of success, and then like I let it all go, and it just accumulated into like good outings, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, I gotta change something, and I think that's exactly what we talked about. Is like if our aim is pure, if my direction is pure, why am I changing it?
Mm.
You know, so I don't know.
Well, we talked about that in one of our episodes actually.
Yeah, we
talked
did.
about it plenty other, but it's like if your the intention is great, but it's like it's the trust and it's the trust in what you're doing. So it's like you're doing something, right? You figure out like I want to work on these mechanics. Okay, well you do it over and over again. You get the result that you're looking for. It's like, all right, this creates that. Okay, now I feel that. Now I'm going to repeat that to create the outcome. It's like, all right, now that's the easy part. All you got to do is just do that over and over again. It's like, yeah, I guess you could say it's hard to repeat it, but that's what we train as athletes. That neuromuscular repetition, where it's just like that brain muscle connection, mind muscle connection, is like doing it over and over and over and over again, like proprioception over and over again. Okay, but then the hardest part is when shit hits a fan, and you're sucking. You're going to go in there and you're going to change what you're doing. Why? Maybe it had nothing to do with you. Maybe the intention was there. Maybe what you were doing was exactly what you needed to be doing. It's just it didn't go your way. And like that's the hardest part of being an athlete in general. Like hardest, one of the. It's like trusting your ability in the hard times. It's easy when you're doing well, but like when you're struggling, trusting that whatever you're doing while you're struggling is exactly what you'd be doing if you were succeeding. It's like when you really get to that point, you're comfortable with yourself enough to be able to really stick to it. It's like, all right. And it sounds like, John, that's what you kind of got at this year. Bad outing, good outing, you showed up the same person. It's like, well, you're not that same person if you're going into that day, like, I'm going to change something. If you go into that day, it's like, all right, whatever, it's a new day. Like, I'm just going to move on. It's like yesterday. It's like you're not sitting thinking about, I need to change this. It's just like, all right, well, whatever happened yesterday happened. It's like I can learn from it, but I don't have to change anything from it. Yeah, could you have executed pitches differently? Yeah, sure. But like in terms of like, structure, like mechanically, in terms of like all these different mindset things, like it's not that deep sometimes. Sometimes yes, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be that. And I think that's the difference between a young player, someone who hasn't had much experience, and someone who's been around the block for a while. It's like it's not always something that needs to be changed. Sometimes it was just that day. Something about the air, something about the food you ate in the morning. Like it's that simple.
Yeah.
A perspective of yours I'd like is the letting go of like the stresses in order to have fun and enjoy the moment.
Can I just touch on what we were talking about right there?
Yeah, sorry.
No. And then no, just really quick because I mean, I think both you guys are spot like, especially what you said, Luca. Like it's spot on because it's like actually what you were talking about with the trust aspect of it. I read a book called 7 Days in Utopia. It's a golf book. It's like a mental, I don't know what you call it, like mental toughness book, whatever. He talks about the process of see, feel, trust. And I thought it was interesting because it kind of combined the internal and the external, which I thought was pretty cool. And it actually kind of became my process for the season. And it wasn't so much about like, because I'm just such a tinker. Like I tinker with like, I tinker with like my front side and my back leg and my this and that. And I did that a lot, and I especially when I was younger, it was just so much like, oh, I could get hinged, like, I need to work on my block. I need to work on like this, that, like, it was just like one thing after another always. And then this year I heard it and I was like, oh, this could actually like combined because I think there is a small space for being internal and working on something like an internal cue. But when it comes to like bullpens and pitching in games, like you have to be external. I think there's very few people in the world that can be internal and still compete because like think about it. Like if I'm focused on what's going within while I'm pitching, I'm not going to give my full energy to what's happening against the hitter. So it's like my coach in college would always say this thing. He'd be like, guys in the big leagues stand on their head and make pitches, dude. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, they don't like, I mean, think about how many times throughout the season they actually feel okay, like good, like they're feeling like crap so much, but they go out and they make pitches and execute and compete, and then they feel like crap and do it again and do it again and do it year after year. But for me, that see, feel, trust was like I would see the target, I would visualize it, I would feel like whatever it was, and it could just be like patience. I could feel balance. I could feel rhythm. It wasn't even necessarily anything like super mechanical. It was just a feeling of something that would give me that internal, like a feeling of balance. Feeling that was basically most of the times it was rhythm, feeling rhythm, and then it was from there it was letting go. So I think the majority of our talk today, that's like how I combine my faith with pitching too, is like that letting go. I think once I would like get ready to throw the ball, it was a process of trusting and letting go. Um, and I think that's kind of like that internal versus external, because they're both of them are like external. I think would, especially when it comes to competing, is more important. But like in order to make adjustments or feel like you have to have a little bit of internal. But I really like that, the see, feel, trust. That really made a difference, I think.
It's funny because we were talking about golf when we first talked about this. Zach was saying about hitting a golf ball into a wall for 17 hours. And we were talking about this. I'm not sure if you heard that.
Yeah, I heard you.
Okay.
Yeah, and the conversation started with John because we were sitting there and I was hitting a golf ball and I had to call John to work on my swing. So is John good at golf? Oh, baby.
Average. At
No.
best.
No.
Okay,
There's the humility. That's the humility.
Average.
No.
What do you shoot in the 70s?
No, John is like, no, John's excellent.
Average.
Like what's
John is
an
not
average day
the-
for you? What's an average day for you?
I don't play that much anymore, It's just kind of
All right. What's your best round? What's your best round? Okay?
This
What's your
is
best round?
humor. This
my
is
best
humor.
my best round was when I was like 12 years old. I shot like a 68 or 67, 68, 67. But since then I haven't shot. I mean, I'm average.
John
It's
casually
just-
picks up a golf club and goes one over.
No. I mean,
Or
average,
okay, we
no.
played in York this year, and John on his first 5 holes that we played was 4 under. That's
that's a stretch.
Shit.
no, that is not a
Ask Kobe.
stretch.
Ask Kobe Cotto. I've been playing with him. He's seen me pretty bad lately. I mean, I'm anywhere from like a 77 to like an 82 right now. It's pretty bad. But
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. So about a year ago, right? After I retired, I went on a little road trip. Played a lot of golf with my brother in Virginia. Played a lot of golf with my uncle in South Carolina. Played some golf in North Carolina and Charlotte with my buddy. Played some more golf when I went back up the East Coast with my brother again in Virginia. I played like 10 or 12 rounds. On my last round before I went back home, best round of my life ever, 86. And I was like, I'm getting somewhere.
yeah,
I'm getting somewhere. Okay. So I leave, I get home maybe like 5-6 days later. I'm like, you know what? I gotta earn this. It's like, I gotta keep working at it. So what I do, I go out there with my cart and I walk. I plan on walking 18 and going to get some practice in. Okay. Well, through like 4 holes, dude, it's like I'd never held a golf club in my life before. Chunking balls are rolling 17 feet in front of me. Driver is just spraying, and I'm like, what happened? Right? So I get to the ninth, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to play the last 18 or the last 9 because I just retired from a sport, and I don't need this bullshit in my life. So that was the last time I played golf.
that's
And
the
I haven't
last
played
time.
since. I retired from golf for a mental break. I was like, you know what?
Oh,
This is not what I need in my life right now. It's like I just checked out from, a lifetime of struggles, and I'm gonna I'm getting over, and I I do not need this right now. So I just
That
golf
game
is
it'll
tough.
turn you into a mental midget really quick. I mean,
Yeah. Well, when you're shooting 77s, it's a little easier. So.
Yeah,
no, it's the
agreed.
same deal.
No,
No, I'm
it's
kidding.
not.
I know. No, it is this.
It's the
I
same
take that
deal,
back.
dude. Because it's
You're
like
right.
you know what you can do, and then it's not up to your standards.
Hmm.
So it's just that you still like. That's what's crazy is like even pros. I feel like they feel it too. Like there's a guy, Joel. I think his name's Joel or Joe Damon. I don't know, but he's hilarious. You guys should look him up. But he'll be like mic'd up on the tour and he'd be like, golf is so hard. He's just like, and he hits like a ball like 10 feet left and it goes in the rough and he's just like depressed, you know? It's like, all right, I'd take that shot all day. But,
Dude,
or he like
I
sticks it to
watched
20 feet and he's like, ah.
I watched Phil Mickelson, not in person on TV, shoot a straight par round. Every hole's a par, just par. Every hole, par, 18 straight. Okay, just hitting balls into like literally a ball, and then there's like 18 feet of bunker right in front of him, 2 feet away. Chips like flops it all out, still pars the hole somehow. Right? Okay. He goes to the interview at the end, and the lady's like, asking him whatever, and he just goes, yeah, obviously today was an absolutely atrocious round. I'm gonna, try to address what the problem was and like be better tomorrow. And I was paraphrased, but not paraphrasing the part that he said that it was an absolutely atrocious round. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, dude, what are you talking about? But then you think about it, it's like, well, it's Phil Mickelson. It's like he holds himself to a standard that, I don't understand just because I'm not that great. I great at that. But if you compare it to baseball, it's like, yeah, maybe you could. But it's like, the standard's there, and as long as you hold yourself to a standard, like there's always not meeting that standard, no matter how good
Yep.
you are, and that's the
Yep.
scary part. No matter how good you are, your standards are always higher. I mean, if you're really good, your standards are always higher than what usually you do. Sometimes you'll supersede that, but
But if
not
you have
always.
fun while holding yourself to that standard, the amount of success you can experience is ridiculous.
For sure, and those are the guys that really do it for a long time.
But it's just like, how do you get to that point of having fun?
Well, okay. I actually talked about this the other day as well. There's a study. There's a study that they did psychologically. This guy had acres and acres of land, okay? And these kids after school would go play on it. And it pissed him off. He goes out there, and what he did was instead of sitting there and being like, hey, get out. I don't want you ever here. Leave. Never come back. Blah, blah, blah. I'll shoot you with BB guns. You know what I mean? Like, because that would make them want to come back more. You tell a kid they can't do something, they're going to want to do it more. So what he did was, he goes, I'm going to give them 25 cents every time they come. Within 2 weeks, not one kid showed up. And what the study found was that the kids were doing it. The kids, slowly what they were doing was, as they were coming to get the 25 cents rather than coming for the joy of playing with the kids. And these are kids, but guess what? We've been around professional athletes before. So they're just as much as kids as anyone else. And you give them a lot of money, the special ones don't lose the love, but then a lot of them play for the money. And then it's very easy to just go out there and do it because you want to put food on your table rather than just for the love of the game. And, I'd argue that professional baseball players have less fun playing the game than a high school kid. And honestly, why? It's like, well, the pressures are higher, but whenever you throw money in there, it's always harder to keep the same joy for the game, the joy for whatever you're doing, And that study, I love that study. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I felt it when I signed professional. I noticed, and not like I was even making millions. Obviously, we were not, but like, it's real. I felt it. I can't speak for you guys, but I did.
Yeah.
And in college too, like I wasn't making the money yet, but the prospect of making the money just put on so much stress. It's like if I go first round, how much I can make this much money? I can pay my family. I can do this. I can do that. I can get my mom a new house. Like all these things are just money. It's like if you wipe the money away, it's like what are you playing for? It's like the joy of the game. It's like it's hard to keep that with the money. I wasn't able to do it, and I struggle with it. And people that can do it, God bless them.
I mean, I don't know if I can put it any better than that. That's spot on right there. I think that's really it. Like, I've definitely felt that. I mean, I think if anybody's been in our position and says they haven't, they're probably lying. And I think the tough part about it is like a lot of people have to learn the hard way, through experience that like, oh, chasing after, that like the money, like this isn't, this is putting an unreasonable amount of stress on me. Like I'm not having fun doing it anymore. And then like we have to learn the hard way and be like, I want to have fun playing again. And that was the cool part about indie ball too, is like the politics, the nonsense of pro ball really got thrown out the window. And then all that was left was like playing for the love of the game.
To me, it was like college summer ball all over again.
Hmm.
You know, or even just summer ball in general was indie ball.
I'm
I
convinced we're
agree.
gonna have one guy on this show. One. He's out there. He's somewhere in this world that doesn't have a positive thing to say about handball. I have
I,
Zach, Colton,
well,
Brandon,
I,
you,
I think
dude,
it's
other
about
buddies,
I think it's about
everybody,
perspective.
and they
I think,
all say the same thing about indie ball. It really changes them.
but
It's
it's about
admirable. I love it. I love hearing it.
I think it's a perspective shift.
I think at the time in that player's life that they really need it.
Yeah, so like think about it. You're going through. You're either A, released, B, not signed, and you're like, dude, what am I gonna do? And you're like, all I want to do is play ball. And then an indie ball team gives you a shot, and so like your perspective shifts, and then you get to indie ball, and you're meeting a hodgepodge of guys. Like I played with Colton, for example, and Valverde were on my AFL team, fall league team. Dude, that fall league team, 70% of that roster is big leaguers. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and Valverde and I talked about this a little bit. Is like, he goes, dude, I showed up unprepared. He goes, I just didn't care. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I can relate. And then like all of a sudden he gets into the season, and like his last 3 months or 2 months of the season were unbelievable. Like
Hmm.
he was our top two relievers. Like he was, and so and like I haven't talked to him since, and that's my fault. But like his perspective shift throughout the year of like oh, like this is real ball. Like you get there and it like, dude, Pablo Sandoval is there. Luis Castro is there. Like there's names. Like if you want to go find something to play for, like each team has a name where it's like, whoa, this guy's here. You know, and then like we're playing Hagerstown, and Hagerstown's the worst team, and we had a little scuffle on the last game of the season, and the only two guys that were mad were the two guys that were in the scuffle, and everybody else is sitting there, and we're having like, I don't want to say this type of conversation, but we're just having conversations. Everybody's laughing and chuckling and be like, dude, you're nasty, or like, yo, like it was fun playing you this year, or like whatever, and nobody on that, even though they were the worst team in the league by far, none of them had a bad attitude. So I think it's just about perspective. Like you're getting to do what you love one more summer, or like, and I would say it comes a little bit from the Latino culture. A little bit is like, and in pro ball you're surrounded by that. Is they don't come from anything, so anything above the like ordinary is embraced with gratitude with them. And I really I love their culture as far as like the human beings they produce, and obviously like there's bad apples in every bunch, but like the good people there. I mean, the Latino community is amazing.
Yeah, they've
Yeah, I mean,
perfected the breed of 100-mile-an-hour throwers.
But like
you ain't
because they
kidding.
have fun, all they do is enjoy playing.
But
Yeah.
okay, so to that point though, like I mean, I'd probably get canceled for saying this. I'm already probably canceled from. I mean, it's not like I'm getting a job in
Anyway, who
an
cares?
affiliate. Who cares? But like the lack of freedom there is pretty tough, right? Like you think like they don't let like personalities shine. They don't let like there's just there's like a just constriction on everything there. Like everyone's just afraid to lose their job. Like even like strength, ATs, whoever else it is, everyone there is just afraid. They're afraid. There's very few people that are kind of grabbing like, the opportunity by the balls. Like it's just like, oh, I'm just like I'm afraid I'm gonna I'm a yes man. I'm gonna do what everybody else says. I'm gonna do like, and then it's like in indie ball, it's like, oh, I can say this and I'm not gonna get like shunned for it. I can do this and like, and then you start to see the best from everyone. It's just interesting how that works. I think affiliates could do a better job of that, of just like letting guys, like, everyone's different, like letting some personalities shine, like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if you
when you
guys
give
would
up
agree with that,
control,
but
no, when you give up control, you allow for things to happen that you may not want to happen. And what I mean by that is in affiliate ball, it's very evident. And this isn't a knock on them. This is a business.
mm,
They give you a lot of money. They want to see you succeed. And if that guy doesn't succeed, and the person that they gave like no money to is succeeding, and they have to make that decision, they're not going to want to make that decision. They're going to always want to push the guy that they gave more money to. It's just the business of it.
yep.
And like, there's a reason why the farm directors are sending, the lineups every day to the coaches. It's like these are professional coaches. These are guys in Double A. I'm not sure about Triple A, but I know at least Double A. It's like the lineups being made by the farm director, and like, why? It's like, well, because if they didn't, the coach may let the best players play, and what would happen then? Wow, what would happen?
Then you would have a farm system. Then you would have a farm system.
A real one,
You would have a culture of success.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, I want to preface that also by saying I had great experiences with the Cardinals and the Twins. I did, if I had to play a favor, I did enjoy the Twins organization more than the Cardinals. It sounds crazy, but I had more freedom actually with the Twins than the Cardinals. My first week with the Twins, I go to Zach. We're sitting there with like locker buddies, and I was like, "Yo, do you mind if do you think they care if I put my like AirPods in to go do like med ball work, like on the mounds out like by the brick wall?" He goes, "Bro, do you?" And I was like, "Oh, sick, dude." I would have gotten shunned with the Cardinals, dude. I would have gotten yelled at. They would have told me like, that's not what we do here, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Like 50% or more of your cleats had to be red. Like, it's just their thing. It's like the Yankees. You have to cut your hair. You can't have facial hair. It's just like, their tradition. But I had good experiences with both organizations. But, definitely with how things are run, if they allowed for just truly the best to prevail, I don't think you can ever go wrong with that.
Oh, and it'd be interesting. Can you imagine what would happen in those circumstances? Because imagine playing the best guys that like made a grand signing bonus, and they're just a no, but they're the best guy, and then like, oh yeah, I'd never. but okay,
Thanks.
okay, but like my point is that like imagine what it would do to like the prospects, like if you sat those guys because they're just not good enough, or like sent them back down because they're not good enough, and like stop pushing guys that shouldn't get pushed. We see it all the time. Like guys that get pushed up through a system just because they're so and so. And I think it would be amazing to see how much more you would get out of even your best guys if you kind of let them learn the hard way.
Create the culture of competitiveness.
100%.
You're talking to Type A personalities, and if he's not a Type A personality, you probably don't want him to be a superstar anyway.
Yep.
Because he's just going to be a toxic team member.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Like, just to rid the game of the politics. Like, once you're signed, like, no, it doesn't matter what it's the best player plays.
I mean, Colt and I have talked about this. Like, I seriously do think he made a great point. Like, he was like, yeah, one day I kind of want to like kind of go whatever role it is, but get in a role where he can actually make some change and change something. Because he's like, we talk about it all the time. It's just wrong, And it's like, instead of he kind of had a cool perspective, because I'm like, no, when I'm out of it, I'm done, But he's like, no, I kind of want to go back in, and like try to change some stuff. I'm like, that's pretty cool. But
I think like once you hang him up, from my perspective, it's like you instantly miss the game. Like while you're playing in it, I think it's like I don't know. I didn't say like after Tommy John surgery, like I had a gratitude for the game and a love for the game again. But like even while playing, it's just like, man, this shit's hard. This shit's hard. This shit sucks. And then all of a sudden, like I like told myself I was done, like 100% done. Like I wasn't gonna be like, well maybe. I was just like black and white. I'm done. And so like I went back and all of a sudden I was like, man, like I just want to be around the game again.
Well, what's the difference between that and the saying is you only know you love her when you let her go? It's like it may suck while you're in it, while you're in that relationship, and like maybe if you just I don't know, you appreciate it a little more. Not saying you wouldn't have ended, but like those things that you miss. It's like maybe those are the things that you were missing while you're in it because you were too focused on the things that really weren't necessary. And Lord knows I fell into that category right here. That was me.
Everyone does.
And so it is what it is. But I will say I don't miss baseball. I don't watch a game and miss it. I don't. It's weird. I even told my girlfriend last year I came to go watch you guys play when you guys were in Staten Island, and I was just like, listen. I mean, it was cool watching Zach throw, but like I was like, people come and watch baseball. Fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I don't miss it. I don't miss. Like, it's weird. Like, granted, is it like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. It took a lot of like of me to really to sit with that because, like, I was trying to think. It's just like I've played this game for so long, right? And there's a thing I struggled with for a little bit after I retired. It's like, I should feel something. I should look at that like my heart should hurt a little bit. Like I should care more. Like I should miss it more. But it's like, how is it possible that I love something so much, and now I don't have it in my life and I don't miss it? It's just like part of my heart is happy that I let it go. Like it was holding me back from actually being me. Like it all these injuries and all the setbacks and everything that I went through. Like how did it not? How did it just allow me just to forget about it? Forget about it might be a strong word, but at least lose the love. It's like love and hate ride a fine line. That's the truth. And like I can't say I hate baseball, but I definitely don't love it. And like the moment I realized I'd stay in it just to make some money is the moment I realized I needed to get out. And I'm glad I made that decision. But the idea that I don't miss it is still something I'm just like, that's crazy to me.
Well, I mean,
after everything.
I don't know if you can relate, but it's like if I went and watched a game right now, like, I mean, I'm a gamer, not a fan or a watcher. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it too. Like we got done with the season, and my family had on the playoffs, and I was like, I don't want to watch this right now. Like
Yeah, dude.
this is the last thing I want to watch. Like let's put on Family Feud or anything else. Like just not baseball.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how like I hate watching it. Like when it's not my team, or it's not like, I don't know. There's just something. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But
it's the psychology behind it is nuts. Something I don't really have a grasp of, but I know that I feel it, and I've kind of come to terms with it now. But at the beginning, it was something that I was really just like, man, like I should feel something.
But
like,
think about what the games put you through, though. Think about how much of a like piece of crap baseball is sometimes. Like it's taught you amazing things, and like, but like the game is harsh, dude. Like
yeah, no, it's unforgiving, absolutely. But like that's what makes it. That's the beauty of it. It's like it's unforgiving, and the idea that the worst thing can happen to the best person. It's like that can happen in sports, just because I mean it can happen anywhere, of course. But I'm not saying I'm the best person, but I was living in a way where it's just like especially professionally at least, it's like I don't know if it was just a repayment for past sin for being a piece of shit. I'm not sure. I have a hard time believing that. In college, I can say that could be the case. I can truly be like, maybe this is this is a payback. Like this is the world evening out, or God punishing me. I know I'm not. I know you don't believe that per se, but yeah, it was crazy to think. Crazy pill to swallow, but All I know is that I think it was probably the best decision I could have ever made at the time when I
Oh
was
yeah, I
making it.
mean,
I think that with how things were going to progress for me, it was worth it. But
you're spot on. Even though with
crazy.
like if it's only about money, it's like slippery slope, you know,
Yeah, no,
for
exactly,
sure.
exactly.
So it's a good
That's ultimately
decision.
what led the decision. So yeah, Zach, we had another one. Hour and 20 minutes of just pure conversation.
It was lovely.
Dude, I enjoyed
I
it. That
like.
was good.
I think the round tables work.
Yeah, I like to have an extra
But
person.
let me conclude this real quick. First off, thank you, John, for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. Very insightful, very deep. Always love conversing with you, Luca. Thank you for your presence as well. Audience members and listeners, we appreciate you too. Continue to listen and tune in. So, saying all that, we'll see you next week.